Civil 3D provides many ways to edit pressure network objects. Let's go ahead and examine this functionality. Let's zoom into the location where our existing ties into our proposed. The first thing you always do to edit any of your parts is to simply select them. You'll notice a couple of things happen here. First, we have the grips. If you hover over any of these grips here, you'll notice you can edit any of the different parts. I can edit the deflection angle. If I hover over this grip, this is the location angle. If I hover over this grip, I can continue the layout, and this one here will lengthen the pipe object. Also notice the Pressure Network Contextual tab that allows me to modify as well as analyze the different parts of the pressure network. In this case, we want to tie the existing network into this location here. I'll go to the Modify panel, Edit Network dropdown, and we'll select the Plan Layout Tools. So what we need is a T connection. So if we look at our Insert panel, I'll click on my parts list here, and you'll notice I have a T connection that I can select from. I'll go ahead and click on Add Fitting, and notice the command line window tells us to specify a placement point for fitting, and I'll go ahead and pick this location here, and there's my first location for the T fitting. I'll press Escape, and then Escape again, and now when I select this object here, notice how I can't actually change the different grips I had before. It's because it's connected to the fitting. I can change the location, but that would break the connection to the fittings. So now what I want to do is select the T connection here, and notice how you get a nice bunch of grips that you can do all kinds of things with. You can flip them. These are very similar to the dynamic grips that you would define with dynamic blocks. I can also continue the layout here. I can also continue the layout here. Or I can, of course, move the location of this to this location here. So I can just snap right there. Notice how it extended that pipe automatically. I'll press Escape. And then what I can also do is select this one here. And I'll go ahead and pick my lengthen part. And notice how when I hover over this, what does it do? It actually will connect it to that fitting. It's a fantastic feature of Civil 3D and pressure networks. Again, we'll pick the lengthen part. We'll go ahead and select the center location right there. And notice how the node snap appears. And now we are all connected. So let me go ahead and select all these 4 pieces to verify that. We'll take them into the object viewer. And there you have it. They're all connected very nicely into the fitting. Some of the other things that you can do is, of course, you can select your pipe or fitting, and then you can go to its specific properties. You can then change the style. You have limited functionality as far as changing the elevations and the northing and eastings and so on, but notice how you cannot change the different type of pipe that it was. To do so, you would simply select it and delete it, and then you could actually redraw that part. You can also navigate to your pressure network, and then you can, of course, expand it and then select the different categories that you want. And I can, of course, select a few of these here. Let's say I wanted to change the style of these objects. You could do so globally by simply right-clicking on the column header and selecting Edit, and then you could actually change the style for those specific entities. Again, you're a little limited to what you can do as far as the size of the pipe and so on. Also, right-click on the actual network collection and go to the Pressure Network Properties, and you will also have the ability to change the default layout settings for creating new fittings and appurtenances. You can also define the default labels that apply to the profile and the section view as well. Notice some of the other options to break apart pipes, move parts, slide parts, and so on. Many of these can be done with the grip editing functionality as well. This concludes this video discussing editing pressure networks. Design checking lets you quickly identify pressure network parts that may not adhere to the design standards defined by the project, or errors in the placement of your pressure networks. Again, these constraints will be defined in your parts list. To begin any kind of design checking, let's zoom into this waterline network. To check individual parts, you could select them individually and then run the design check through the contextual tab. Or if you want to check the entire pressure network, simply navigate to the pressure network, then right-click on it in the Prospector tab and choose the Select option. This will select the entire network object, and then you can check the entire network. Notice the 2 options available. We have Design Checking and Depth Checking. Let's first do a design check. Notice the options available to toggle on or off. These parameters are defined in the parts list. We'll go ahead and leave them all toggled on and click OK. You'll notice it tells you Design Check Complete, 5 violations found and marked in the drawing. If I press Escape here, you'll notice that it tells you exactly what's going on at the different locations. If I hover over this warning, you'll notice it tells you that I have an open connection. In this case, we don't really care because, of course, this is tying into some existing pressure network object. As you peruse the drawing, you'll notice sometimes that as you zoom out, you're not seeing any of the warning symbols. Simply do a Regen All, and it'll redraw those warning symbols for you based on the elevation that you're zoomed in or out of. I'll go ahead and zoom into this one, and of course in this case we have an open connection and we can replace this one. So I'll go ahead and select that part. I'll go ahead and delete it. Then I'll select one of these pressure pipes, and I'll go ahead and click on the Edit Network dropdown here, Plan Layout Tools, and we need to put a 90-degree elbow in here. So we'll go ahead and select that from the Fitting dropdown, and we'll click Add Fitting, select it, and notice how it's all ready to go. Again, to reattach it, you simply click the grip, and then select the actual fitting. And now because the grips aren't there, you can tell that the fitting and the pipe are connected to each other. You can zoom in and, of course, view some of the other different warning symbols that we have throughout the pressure network. And you would check these here, make edits to your pipe network, and then the warning symbols will dynamically go away. If you have warnings and you're okay with the warnings, what you can also do is select any pressure network object and then right-click and select Clear All Pressure Pipe Warnings, which is a pretty cool little option. That way it just gets rid of them all. Lastly here, we can actually go ahead and select one of our pipe objects. And what we'll do is we'll actually do a depth check. This is a pretty standard check. You just simply select the tool, and then it prompts you for the path that you want to follow along the actual pressure network. Notice how you can select objects in the plan or the profile view, which is pretty cool, depending on where you're doing your edits. We'll go ahead and select that first one, and then let's just go ahead and say we want to check the depth through this area here, and then we'll press Enter, and then notice how you have an option to define a minimum depth of cover. So let's say we want to check a depth of 4 feet, and a maximum depth of, let's say, 10. We'll click OK here, and it tells you 3 warnings were placed in the drawing on existing waterline. Again, zoom out a little bit, and what you can see is the warnings. Simply hover over them, and it'll tell you from this station to that station, these are the violations that are occurring. What's also really cool is that if you go ahead and zoom into your profile, you'll also be able to see the warnings in there as well. Again, just do a regen to make sure you can see the warning symbol. Simply hover over the warning symbol, and it tells you exactly what you need to do. You can then either make your edits in the profile view or the plan view, and simply the warnings will update automatically depending on the edits that you make. This concludes this video discussing design checking pressure networks. Civil 3D provides ways to add pressure networks to the different views, such as profile and cross-section views. Let's first look at the profile view. The first step that I'll do is I'll go ahead and zoom into a part of my pressure network object. We'll go ahead and start at the beginning here, and we'll go ahead and select it. There are a few ways that you can add the parts to your profile. You'll notice right in the ribbon, you can actually select the Draw Parts and Profile, or you can also right-click and you can select the Draw Parts and Profile View option down below here. When you do that, notice how it prompts you to select the profile view. So I'll go ahead and select my profile view for this main line, and there's the pressure network. If you want to add more than one, you can select more than one object. If you want to add the entire network, what you can do is simply select it through the Prospector tab. If I navigate to my pressure network, I'll right-click on Proposed, and we'll go to Select. Notice how the contextual ribbon appears. We'll go ahead and click on Draw Parts and Profile View, and then we'll go ahead and simply select our profile view, and there are all the different parts of the pressure network added to the profile view. Let's take a look at cross-section views. With the cross-section views, it's a little bit different. You first select one of the sample lines or one of the cross-section views themselves. We'll go ahead and select on this sample line group, and you'll notice there's an option to sample more sources. This is very similar to adding a corridor section or a surface model into a cross-section view. We'll simply select it, and then click on the pressure network that we want to add, and click Add into the Sampled Sources view. Click OK, and as you can see, those pressure network objects will be added right to the cross-section view. Very cool, very quick, and of course, any changes to the pressure network objects, they will automatically update in the profile view as well as the cross-section view. This concludes this video discussing adding pressure networks to different views. Civil 3D provides many ways to annotate your pressure networks in each of the different views, such as plan, profile, and cross-section. Let's first look at the plan view. To add labels to your plan view, simply select one of the pressure network objects, and then in the contextual ribbon, you can actually use the Label and Tables panel to add the different labels you want to add. You can click on this one here to actually decide and choose which label styles will be used to label the pressure network. And if you select this one here, this will actually use the default styles defined in the Command and Feature Settings defined in the Settings tab. Let's go ahead and just select that one. And as you can see, those labels are automatically applied to every part of the pressure network. As with all label objects in Civil 3D, depending on where those labels are located, you of course can then simply select them and then move them out of the way by dragging them, and depending on what the drag state is set to in a label style, they will either be composed or stacked text. Don't forget, of course, if you need to override a label style, such as in this case, let's say we wanted to add a hard carriage return between the 10" by 10" ductile iron line, we'll go ahead and select it, and then in the ribbon we'll click Edit Label Text, and then in here I can actually override the default label style, and we have the text the way that we wanted it to display. In the profile view, it's very similar. You simply select one of the pressure network objects, and then you go to the Add Labels dropdown, and again, you can select Add Pressure Network Labels, which label styles Civil 3D will annotate with, or if you pick Entire Pressure Network Profile, it'll use the default styles defined in the command and feature settings. Select that, and again, same exact functionality. You can simply select the different labels, move them as you need to, with the different grips that appear on the different label objects. Let's look at the cross-section view, and in this case, it's a little bit different. Let's go ahead and zoom into one of the locations where we have a pressure network object. Now, there's no global way to do this as of this version, and I'm in Civil 3D 2014. That said, there are a couple ways to do this, but let's go over the best way to do it. You could select the section view or the pressure network object and add a view label. However, let's go ahead and do that and let's see what happens. When you click on Add View Labels, notice how you can't select a specific label style to define for this pressure network object. It will automatically use the one defined in the command and feature settings. So to be able to use a custom offset elevation label, what you can first do is simply create one, and let's go ahead and look at that real quickly. So what I've done is I basically have copied the offset over elevation label style, and I simply added in some text in the Layout tab that actually said 10" waterline. So let's go ahead and click in there and click over here. And notice how it says 10" waterline, and then we have offset and elevation equals the actual offset and elevation as will be read in the cross-section view. I also went in and made sure this was on the specific layer that I wanted it to be on. That way I could freeze the layer if I need to in the cross-section view. So instead of actually selecting the cross-section view, go to the Annotate tab, Labels and Tables panel, and then click on the Add Labels dropdown, and then select the Section View, and then Add Section View Labels. This will bring up the Add Labels dialog box, which will allow us to select the type and which label style you want to hard code and actually select. In this case, I don't need a marker style, so I'll go ahead and click Add, and then I'll select my section view, and then now, using just regular AutoCAD O-snaps, I can snap to the location that I want to define that label at. You would basically go through each of the section views and simply add the labels as you need to. Again, there's no automated way of doing this as of Civil 3D 2014, and that's just how it is. So as you would expect, of course, once you're done, you would just basically go in and grip edit and move out the labels as you need to better display the information. Let's go ahead and look at adding tables to our drawing as well. If I go to the Annotate tab, Labels and Tables panel, and we click Add Tables, you'll notice there is an option to actually go in and add pressure pipe, fitting, and appurtenances tables. So you could add 3 individual tables that would, of course, automatically and dynamically read the pressure network objects. Let's just look at the pressure pipe option. We'll go ahead and click on this. And just like with all table creation, you select a style, which I have created already here. You pick the network you want to label on. And then, of course, you have the different ways you can split the table. And, of course, you can change this after you create the table as well. We'll go ahead and click OK, place it in our drawing, and there's our dynamic pressure pipe table. Again, these are all defined in the Settings tab in the different categories. So here's the pressure pipe table styles, here's the fitting table styles, and here's the appurtenance table styles as well. This concludes this video discussing annotating pressure networks.